You are listening to the Enormocast.
Here at the Enormocast, we truly believe in the all-audio podcasting format, where you can listen while you drive, work, wash your cat, or even prancercise.
We're going to really cut the noose and let it loose with the prancer-sized gallop.
But climbing nerds do not live on words alone, which is why Black Diamond invites you to tune into BDTV, a video series that delves beyond the numbers into the personalities and motivations behind our beloved sport. The latest episode, episode 6, features French boulderer Bloussard Jackie Godoffe. I don't know. It's French. There's probably a bunch of letters you don't even pronounce. Either way, if you consider yourself a student of the history of climbing, or if you mistakenly think that bouldering was invented 15 years ago in a gym in California, then you need to check out The Master of Moves. Also, stay tuned past the credits on today's episode for a conversation with Dan Mirsky about the making of his film, The Width of Life, featuring a personal hero of mine, Dave Pegg. That's BDTV on YouTube, Vimeo, BlackDiamondEquipment.com. That's BDTV, featuring the characters behind the lines. Over the years, friends and family have said to me, "You know, Chris, there's more to life than climbing." Well, needless to say, I don't talk to those people anymore. I miss you, Mom. But it appears Sportiva believes this too. Besides making the best climbing shoes out there, they make stuff for the long approach to nowhere, known as trail running and hiking. Do you like to run or walk aimlessly? Then check out the Superlight Helios 2 Mountain Runner or the Trango TRK GTX. Apparently, one acronym was not enough for these mighty boots. And frankly, though they're sold as trail boots, they look technical enough that Bonatti himself would have given his last cannoli for a pair back in the day. So check out all the other stuff Sportiva has besides fantastic climbing shoes at Sportiva.com or your nearest high-end outdoor retailer. It turns out they're even into skiing, if you can believe that.
Listen, where are you playing in town? You playing here?
We're doing the Normo Dome, whatever it is. It's terrific.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
big
big
house. We
place
sold
that
it
side
out.
of town. That's a
Very
big
nice.
place. You sold it out.
20,000 seats.
You
really should.
The hell are you doing? I couldn't sleep. I'm checking the ropes. There was a frayed end on your rope, and I'm cutting it out.
Good weather, bad weather. No, later, anytime. Good time.
Today's show is brought to you by Black Diamond Equipment, with support from Maxim Ropes.
And the fine folks at La Sportiva. And don't forget our charter sponsor, Bonfire Coffee. Go to bonfirecoffee.com and enter Enorma at checkout for a discount on great coffee and to support the Enormocast.
And now back to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Enormocast. This is your host, Chris Kalous. It is about 10:30 here in Colorado, May 27th, the end of May. And this is episode 105 of the Enormocast, a conversation with Canadian unassuming hard man, unlikely hard man, in fact, Will Stanhope. But before we get to that, a couple things coming up. I want to remind folks that the Lander International Climbing Festival is coming up, and I'll be up there with some friends with my entourage here from Carbondale. We've made it up there a few years running now, and it's always a good time. Not really doing much officially with the program, but if everything works out, the mobile studio will be up there. You'll recognize it. It's easily recognizable. If you do recognize it, come by and say hello. Maybe you'll get a beer or a shot or just a handshake. Who knows? Stop by, say hello. That's really one of the reasons I'm up there as the official Enormocast. Otherwise, I'm just up there to see some friends and have a good time at the climbing festival. People always tell me, like, Kalous, don't go to climbing festivals. That's when everybody else is there and the crags will be mobbed. I'm like, well, yeah, but you go to climbing festivals for other reasons besides climbing. And if you don't know what those other reasons are, come to Lander, see what else is going on besides the climbing. And the climbing's good. And there's room for everybody up at Wallet Iris. The weather is cooler. You can get some pitches in at Sinks and a few other places. So 13th through the 16th of July. And I think I might have said it was the second weekend of July. And that's traditionally when it is. But who knows why, but it's the third weekend of July. 13th through the 16th. Check it out, climbersfestival.org for information, tickets, if you want to sign up for clinics, see who the famous people are that are going. Go check it out. Also, I added a little bit of bonus content to the end of this episode. I recorded a little conversation with Joe Kinder that I tacked on to the front of an episode a couple times ago, 102, I think that was, with Rebecca, and in support of something that Black Diamond was doing. So I'm just trying to kind of figure out some ways to change the show up a little bit, maybe do a little bit different types of advertising for the sponsors. Sponsors are a big part of why the Enormocast still exists, along with you guys' donations and the other help that you do, whether it's following Facebook or reviewing the podcast on iTunes. There's stuff that you can do to help out, but the sponsors are on with the program because they believe in the program, and I believe in them as folks who make good quality gear that I actually use. So that's how it all works out. And I know some people chafe at advertising in any type of climbing media, but it's part of the show. I try to spice it up with my own dumb sense of humor or very, very obscure references, sometimes more obtuse, sometimes more obscure, but that's just part of the show. So hopefully you put up with it or you actually enjoy it. I laugh at myself sometimes when I do the commercials. So anyway, maybe that's asking too much of you to actually laugh at my humor. But so occasionally I'm going to do some bonus stuff at the end, not just always sponsored, but just ideas that I come up with. I don't know. That's how the show works. So stick around for that if you're interested in a conversation with Dan Mirsky about his film on BDTV called Width of Life about our friend Dave Pegg. All right, I think that's it for business. Let's move on to our conversation with Will Stanhope. This is another episode full of reminiscence because I've known Will for many years, since he was a young, up-and-coming climber just on his first international trip after cutting his teeth up in Squamish and other places in Canada. And it's been a real pleasure to watch this kid grow and become one of the more accomplished adventure climbers around, and certainly a hero, a prodigal son from Canada. So this one goes out to the Canadians, the Canadians up there in America's hat. Will is a humble guy. He's got a very dry sense of humor, and he'll keep you in stitches when you're around him. He's a nice guy. He's a humble guy, unassuming, but he's still got the eye of the tiger, this guy. It's in there behind that baby face. So it was a real pleasure to sit down and talk to an old friend. And it's been quite a joy to watch the little fledgling fly over the years.
Mildly turned on, which is good.
Yeah. But yeah, so we'll just start in the past.
Okay.
It's like going to the Wayback Machine. So I remember, and this is a fantastical retelling of a story, or I probably retold the story in a vastly different way. But when we met in Indian Creek, and this was a decade ago, minimum, I would guess, or about a decade ago. I think it was probably about 2005 or 6. Mm-hmm. Is that about right? Yeah, when you and Jason showed up?
Yep.
In the van?
Yeah.
Rolling
Big
in
blue
the van.
van.
Yeah. You were telling me a story or a scam that you guys had about getting continental breakfast.
Yeah, we read about it in Gripped, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So this was like a remake of some other scam.
Yeah, we were in Bishop, and we were kind of... And I totally don't recommend this. But yeah, we would go into continental breakfast at the hotels in the morning, and eat food.
Right. But you had like a whole like scam going on.
Yeah, I think I had a pillow with me.
Right.
Which I think was ultimately my downfall. But
what was the original thinking behind the pillow?
Just to make it look like we were staying there. I can't really recall. But,
well, the thing is that you, you're notoriously baby-faced anyway. And you were what, probably 17, is that right?
Yeah, I was 17, 18, and I looked like I was 12.
Yeah, I mean, that's like something that people throw around, that, I looked like I was 12. But honestly, like, you looked like you were, like, just not even a mature 12, like, of just a solid, like, if you had said I'm 12, everybody would have been like,
Yeah, totally.
So anyway, that fits into the pillow and the we're staying there scam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and basically on like the third continental breakfast in Bishop, things went a little haywire, and the lady at the front desk saw that something was fishy, and the cops came and basically drove us to the Bishop city limits, if I remember correctly, or said to leave.
Right.
But they didn't. Yeah.
Didn't he take all your booze?
Yeah, we totally. Yeah, I had a fake ID, and my name was Antonios Theodosio. I was a 28-year-old swarthy Greek guy.
Where did you get that?
This guy I worked with at this job I had.
That was his name?
Was his name. It was like his expired.
It was like McLovin. You guys just made a name up.
It was his expired Ontario driver's license or something that I got off of him. And
did you resemble him at all? I mean, is there a picture on this thing?
Yeah, I didn't resemble him at all. But he worked in Yosemite.
Oh. Because
some of the employees there aren't, perhaps the most astute.
Mm-hmm.
So we had good luck in the valley. And my buddy Jason used it a fair bit too. And he's almost albino.
Yeah, Jason Kruk.
Yeah, Jason Kruk. And super funny stories.
Well, you guys showed up in Indian Creek. This was like your first climbing trip. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, you're 17, he's 18, you're 18, he's 19, something like that. Like, two, like, fully white boys, like, wide-eyed, rolling into Indian Creek. And you guys ended up camping with us and a bunch of other people. And it was like, it's funny to think back because, I rarely, you rarely get to see somebody, like, being formed as a climber. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of like what you guys were doing, like on this like total road trip. So tell me about like getting out of high school and how it comes about that your parents, not to disparage their sort of parenting techniques, but just said, okay, boys, off you go in your little van and down to America to go rock climbing. For how long? How long was that trip for?
It was a few months,
right? For
sure. Yeah. I wanted to go to Yosemite forever. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Jason just got out of high school. I went to college for a year, but was just totally not into it.
Okay.
Just couldn't wait to hit the road.
So was it the other way around? Are you older than
him? I'm 1 year older than Jason.
Yeah, see, I got confused.
Yeah. So, we bought an enormous blue van and just pointed it south to the valley.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember rolling into Yosemite, and Tomas Huber was there, like throwing laps on Midnight Lightning with his long flowing hair and drinking King Cobra. And it was a really kind of heady experience for two kids from the suburbs.
Yeah, so a suburban existence. Again, like what went down? Your folks were just totally fine with it. Like, did you have to do
they were
cajoling, conniving, and
no? That's like,
had you just
thumbs up?
Simply either proved yourself to be responsible, or like were such a pain in the ass. They were like, all right, beat it.
Well, I was 18 at the time. Right. It's like I was kind of could do my own thing and been driving for a few years, and
right.
Yeah, I think it was all systems go.
Nice.
Yeah. But I totally remember meeting you down there, and you playing the guitar, playing "Don't Look Back in Anger" by Oasis. And it totally turned me on to British rock.
The weird thing is I don't remember. I don't remember this.
It was such a rollicking version.
I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that on the walk over here. And I have... Who was I playing? Who was the other guitar player there that we were playing with? I can't remember. So a lot of those guys, it's like one of those classic things where we spent a month together and then all went our separate ways over the last, that was, like I said, it was a decade ago. At least it was, I think, like, is that right? 2005 or 6?
2006, I believe. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't know what was going on, but yeah, it was a pretty motley crew of, all different abilities too. In that crew up on the Slick Rocks.
Yeah. No, it was awesome. I'd never seen the Utah desert before. And you, DDA. Samuel Anthematten. Remember that guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
do you remember the British girl whose hand got all infected? Francesca or something like that? No. Dreadlocks. And she got staph in her hand, and it, like, maybe you weren't around for that, but it got
sounds gnarly in the desert.
It was so gnarly. Well, it was because of that. It was because everybody was, like, living out there. And her hand got so enormous, like, it just was this crazy balloon hand. And then somebody there, like, convinced her to go to the doctor. Like, I actually saw it afterwards, after it had come down a bit, and it was totally crazy. But yeah, somebody had to go to the doctor. The other thing I remember happening to me there is I got sick, like, just living in the desert, cold, warm, living in a tent, and went to the doctor in Moab, and basically, like, he wouldn't give me any medicine. He was one of these, like, don't hand out antibiotics to people. Like, just, he's like, you're young and healthy, and, like, you're going to get better. And
the Mormon naturopath?
I don't know what his deal was, but I was like, look, I had to, like, lay it down for him. I'm like, look, I'm living in a tent, like, in the dirt. I need to get better. Like, I'm not going to get better. I'm not going to be wrapped in a bed on a couch watching TV here. So finally he, like, broke and wrote me a script for some antibiotics so I could get better down in the desert there. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
that's critical.
So how did you end up a kid that was, like, dying to go to Yosemite?
I've always loved climbing literature. I remember at our climbing gym in North Van, somebody dropped off a box of, like, old climbing magazines, and I would just pore over them and reread articles again and again. And there's just so much lore and great stories from the valley that I kind of knew I had to go there at some point. And yeah, when I got there, I was just totally enthralled by the place.
Were you a big outdoor climber already?
Yeah, we'd kind of hitchhike up the Sea to Sky to Squamish. And that was kind of our local cliff, or, big older climbers for rides. We were doing that when we were in our early teens.
And you and Jason were like...
Yeah, me and Jason were super tight and climbing all the time.
And you mostly got your start in gyms?
Yeah, the gym in North Van, that's where I met him. Right.
And so kind of a typical thing. That's a cool part of it, though, is because so many gyms I've been to have that old stack of climbing magazines that most people just walk on past them, but there's always these people that, like...
Yeah, and I was obsessive. I would, like, reread articles and be able to quote stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
What kind of, like, do you remember anything specific, like, about the Who? Of who you were reading about or anything like that?
There's a lot of Largo. Totally a lot of Largo, and Peter Croft's writing about the area. And yeah, I would just read anything.
Sure.
Yeah, I was insatiable.
And then you walked into Yosemite, and the first thing you see is Tomas Huber.
Oh, Tomas Huber throwing lap upon lap. And, like, we couldn't even do the first move on Midnight Lightning. It's just so greasy, and we're road lagged. And we had a whole bunch of really funny experiences, like Jason and I were tried to climb the Salafay wall. And we're like, okay, like, you lead the first day and I'll lead the second day, and we'll do it in 2 days, and trying to Jumar with a giant pack. And we're just kind of figuring it out. Like, we just
how far did you get?
I had, like, every piece of gear I owned, and I got stuck in the hollow flake.
Oh yeah.
And I just remember kind of oozing out of the hollow flake, thinking, like, I'm about to take, like, 150-foot winger here. And Ammon McNeely was on the Jolly Roger, over on the Mammoth Terraces. Like, I think he was having a King Cobra, and he had his pirate flag out. And I remember oozing down the hollow flake and, like, arriving back at the belay totally teary-eyed. And I was like, Jason, do you think Ammon saw me cry?
Did he?
Yeah, and Jason's like, yeah, I think so.
So you have to pendulum into that thing and then just climb.
Yeah. And I was like, well, it's like, I mean, the betas don't take any gear, and I just, like, had a crushing rack on, thinking something would fit somewhere. And we'd never climbed anything wide before. And Squamish is pretty, the cracks are a lot slimmer. So,
So did you get there in one day, though?
Yeah.
You climbed up the free blast and got over to there. That's a pretty good day.
It was
big wall attempt.
But that's where we bailed.
Were you hauling or had you pre-hauled?
No, Jason was jugging with the giant pack on.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. And then we tried.
Pretty good go though. I'm gonna give you props for that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like with that valley climbing, there's no shortcuts to like kind of taking a beating and learning it the super hard way, like the slap, like don't do that again. Right. You know, I don't know. I'm not a big believer in like learning in a book, and you kind of just have to go and I don't know, take your knocks a little bit.
Like jugging and rapping with a big pack on, especially rapping with it on, which is like a super dangerous newbie play. Mm-hmm. Like it can get really dangerous like really quickly, oddly. It seems like it's like it suffocates you. Yeah, and jugging with it's one thing, but rapping with it is like people kick off and all of a sudden it's just like you're like a hair's breadth away from losing control and like eating shit, and you can't breathe, and it's trying to flip you upside down. Yeah, it's pretty bad news.
Yeah, I know. It's not a go.
So what came next?
My buddies Jeremy Blumel and Craig McGee were going to go climb the nose, and Jason and I kind of tagged along like, well, you know, I guess there's a little bit more of a safety margin if we both parties decide to wrap. We got 2 ropes. Right. So at that time I was like also Jumaring with like 1 Jumar and a Gree. That was our method. And I like dropped a shoe off like underneath the great roof at some point, and it turned into like a gnarly. We tried to do it in a day, and it turned into like a kind of 28-hour all night thing. I remember Jason taking some huge wingers off the changing corners in the middle of the night, like ping ponging down. Yeah.
So you dropped a shoe. Did you have another shoe, or now you in a sock?
I have my runners, but I was out of the leading. I dropped a climbing shoe.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So, that was convenient.
Yeah, totally. It was like, your lead, bud. But yeah, we kind of topped out at dawn and shuffled down. And yeah, we'd never really had an all-nighter before. Right. It's kind of it's a wild experience for young kids.
Yeah, totally. That sounds awesome.
No, it was cool. In retrospect, it was super cool. Yeah. Huddling in the space blanket, kind of like underneath the last bolt ladder on the nose. And like, I think that same season, Tommy did the free rider in the nose in a day free. So it's like, you know, I was such like on another stratosphere. Right. I could barely climb it in a day with all the tricks. And
right. Yeah, but that's a good go again, like to try to even attempt to climb in a day.
Oh yeah, that's what I was saying. Like there's no shortcut. You just kind of got to go take your lickings there.
Right. What else did you guys have any like unmitigated triumphs during that first visit, or was it all just beat down?
No, I think that
although that's a pretty triumphant day. Yeah. Or a day and a half.
Yeah, we got caught in kind of almost an electrical storm at the top of Half Dome. Tried to do that in a day, and yeah, it wasn't a crazy amount of success. It was just a lot of beatdown. But yeah, critical learning moments.
And did you guys roll straight to the creek?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we pinned it across the desert and met you.
It came out and showed up in the creek.
Yeah, totally.
That's funny because I don't know why, but I don't know if I remember you talking about any of these things.
We're probably a little bit embarrassed.
Or whatnot. Really?
It wasn't the most rollicking
successful trip.
Yeah.
But it solidified something in you to keep pursuing this whole thing.
Oh, yeah. It's just the wildest experiences that I ever had in my life.
Right.
You know, it's like it was impossible to kind of go back at that point.
And you'd had enough experience in Squamish, like on big routes, and
we did,
and have an idea of like a dirtbag climbing community and everything else.
Mm-hmm. But everything in Squamish is so piddly compared to the valley. You know, we thought we were decent trad climbers, and then I got bouted on the slippery hollow flake pitch.
Oh yeah.
You know, I climbed a few 512s in Squamish, and you know, I thought it was decent, and then I just you know, the stuff that Royal Robinson climbed in tennis shoes we couldn't do.
Yeah, he would lucky to have tennis shoes.
Yeah, totally.
That's what, like 5'9", I think, on the topo.
I think it might be a 8 or something.
Oh right.
Anyway,
I once climbed the entire flake. You know, if you go like the newer way to do the you can do it on the free rider, like you go all the way down.
Oh,
right.
But like the Bermuda Dunes.
The Bermuda Dunes. Yeah. Like you come up and you start in it when it's just a little seam.
Oh, cool.
And then you're like, it's like a 200-foot pitch to climb it into hands, and then in, you know, like you do on the free rider. But if you don't do that bolted traverse, which I don't think people really do anymore.
No,
everyone lowers all the way down, or down climbs.
That's the way I did it.
Yeah. So anyway, but that's pretty cool to go all the way down. There's a little bit different experience than like swinging into it and then just trying to like crab up it.
Oh man, that was seriously, I think, the closest call I've ever had. Like, I seriously thought I was gonna bite it.
Yeah.
It's the only time I've ever burst into tears on lead. Before or since.
That's it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Good job, man. I've cried on lead once.
Have you?
Yeah. Aid climbing, of course.
Where, on which route?
Have I told this story before? I don't know. In the Fisher Towers, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I was like on this route called World's End, and I let out soloing, so there's no one to commiserate with, and you know, did a bunch of standard kind of rurping and things like that, but nothing good, you know, nothing good. And on the topo there was supposed to be a bolt somewhere in this pitch, and then you get up and there's like, have you ever climbed there? You've climbed in the Fishers, haven't you?
Yeah, I've climbed the Finger Feet.
Okay. You remember the bands where there'd be cobbles?
Yeah.
There's like a couple prominent ones on the tower.
Yeah.
And then you like pass through like 30 feet where there's cobbles stuck in the, like, spread out cobbles.
Yeah.
So there's like a cobble, and then typically there's an empty hole where there used to be a cobble. So I'm like up there, and I'm putting tie-off webbing on the cobbles, like kind of like slinging these cobbles basically. And so you would try to find a cobble that stuck out. If you can imagine the sphere of the cobble that stuck out beyond, you know, the apex of the sphere, so there was actually a flat bit on top.
That sounds horrifying.
And while you're hanging on it, meanwhile, there's like this empty hole next to you where there used to be a cobble. So then you're running through this scenario of this cobble ripping out while you're on it. So I do, and then also as you'd high step, I if you can imagine, like my fingers would be all pianoed on top of it, like holding the sling on, like two hands, all my fingers like pressing down on the sling so it wouldn't slide. And then I'd like high step and do another one, and I did a few of them in a row, and I'm like, I can't see the bolt, like it's gone, like there is no bolt. And of course these things, like as soon as you unweight them, they just flutter off. So I'm like way up there with this huge loop of slack that is clipped to some ropes like way down below me, and I'm just like eye to eye level, like with my hands, and just like looking up, and there's no bolt, and I just like uncontrollably start sobbing, like just like a and then I like finally, like after one, you know, I always say that like one solitary tear just rolled down my cheek and hit my chin and fell into the abyss.
Dude, that's poetic.
I know. And then I like got it together and did one more step in my aiders and came up over this little lip, and the bolt was actually like he'd placed it in this kind of receded like Waco where I couldn't fucking see it. Jesus. And so I like
that must have been such a moment of relief.
It was amazing. So
yeah, that sounds a hell of a lot scarier than the hollow flake.
And I think that might be the only time I've ever cried on lead.
Yeah.
But I have passed out on lead, but that is a story I've told before in the Aaron Mulkey episode, so I'm not going to tell it again.
Okay. Well, I'll have to
go back to that one.
I will.
All right, so you are cutting your teeth. You went down to Yosemite this first trip 10 years ago. All right, so, you know, had you already decided, or when did you decide, like, this is it, I'm committed to this like lifestyle, I'm going to be a climber? I don't know if you ever at first thought like I'm going to be a professional climber, but clearly you said this is my thing.
Yeah, it was just like, it was the most full value experience I'd ever had. So it was kind of like, I don't know, impossible to go back a bit. You know what I mean? Kind of like
go back to suburbia. Go back to school.
Yeah. It's like, I'll just kind of shelve that one as a good memory, and you know, get a job at the insurance corporation here in North Vancouver. You know, it's like I wanted more of it. And, so it just kind of made more and more trips to the valley and elsewhere. And the valley's a crazy place, right? Because you have these really mind-bending experiences when you're younger, and then, you know, you climb the same pitch a couple years later, and you're like, oh, that's totally no big deal. But, the valley was like the epicenter. It was the place to be. You know, so many legendary characters, and yeah, a ton of routes I aspired to climb.
Mm-hmm. So talk about some of your successes there. Then once you finally figured your shit out and stopped jugging with a haul bag on.
Well, one of the super fun early missions was my buddy Jason and I climbed the Golden Gate just over a week, and we just kind of went from the ground up, and it was kind of our first big like vertical camping experience, and didn't pre-inspect any of those upper pitches, and that was just super wild, fun time, just kind of piecing it together on the go.
How long ago after the first trip was that?
That was a bunch of years later.
Okay.
Yeah, this would be 2009.
Okay. Yeah, 4 years.
Yeah.
3 years.
And, yeah. And then I thought that was just the funnest thing, just to kind of embark on the big wall and kind of piece it together as you go up and camp on the wall. It was one of the funnest trips I've ever had.
Mm-hmm. And you guys were successful?
Yeah. I think Jason didn't quite do one pitch, but more or less, yeah.
And more or less successful. We'll talk. I mean, I'm trying to think through your resume. What about? Didn't you have some sort of flirtation with the Prophet?
Yeah, I did some filming with Leo on the Prophet.
Mm-hmm. And the Prophet is a right side route, freed by Leo Holding and
Jason Pickles
and 513, Super Gnar, Scary, 512. What is?
Yeah,
what
it was a
there?
super wild effort. Their original bid, because they went from the ground up, so didn't pre-inspect anything.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, some of his leads down low. There's one pitch called the Screamer pitch. That's like I still can't fathom a boulder rock climbing effort.
Right.
Just having, he just went up there and, it's maybe 13 minus, but like you really have no idea which way you're going. It's like, that crazy cryptic right side of El Cap.
Like the dark diorite?
The diorite, and kind of climbed up a crumbly corner and put in some gear and then just kind of launched into this crazy wild sequence, kind of in that bad to the bone neck of the woods.
Yeah, I climbed the plastic surgery disaster over there, and I've always wondered like where it was compared to that.
Yeah,
I think actually I went up on Bad to the Bone too. On like an attempt on a 1 day like speed thing, and just realized that just wasn't my thing.
Yeah,
I
can't imagine.
Go super slow.
Well, yeah, it's like I think JT wrote it's like be like rushing brain surgery or something.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so this route exists.
Yeah, and Leo wrote about it in I think in Alex Huber's big Yosemite book, just about his original efforts. And yeah, in 2010, I filmed him climb this A1 beauty pitch. Was at the kind of like near the tippy top of El Cap, and it was one of the most gorgeous splitters I've ever seen. Just kind of barely there on this beautiful pane of granite. And so I filmed Leo send that pitch, and then that season he climbed it. So I really wanted to do it myself. So that winter I broke my foot in the UK, and the next fall I tried it with Sonny.
Mm-hmm.
And so we tried those lower pitches the same way Leo had tried them, just from the ground and kind of inching our high point up and backing off a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And on that, and we lowered into the upper ones, but anyway, Sonny climbed it on that trip, and I fell off the top of the A1, but came back the next year and climbed the whole route. So,
dang. So did you go over to England? Yeah, that's where you broke your foot. Did you go over there specifically to try to like get your head in the game for that kind of thing, or was it just a trip of interest?
Well, I kind of had a girlfriend over there at the time, and so I'd made a few trips over there, mm-hmm. and I love the climbing in the UK. I love the culture and the energy for it there. How much they care about it.
Right.
It's so cool. And so I was just dabbling around, climbing with my buddy Tim Emmett when I broke my foot. But
didn't you rip like the gear out of like the famous flake on the one from the movie?
Yeah, Parthian shot.
Yeah. So in true, or what's it called? Hard grit.
Hard grit.
Yeah, the one where he's got them all nested in there.
Yeah.
Doesn't he pitch onto it in the movie?
Yeah, he pitches onto it.
And you did too, and it all ripped out.
But it's funny, like when I took a look at that flick, I was just like, this looks so dicey to me. But I kind of learned a lot from that trip. I kind of learned to really trust my own instincts and not just say, well, other people have taken the whip, so therefore it's okay. You kind of have to trust your own spidey instincts and like, treat every experience kind of like as you see it in the moment, as opposed to going off other people's, the history of it all.
When you said that, like, it's cool how much they care, and you kind of smiled, what do you mean by that?
Well, like every little, small town England cliff, like there's so much writing about it, and maybe on the grit, like how much lore there is,
right?
How much history,
right? I
think is really cool. In Canada, climbing's not such a big thing as it is. In the UK, I feel like there's really there's an appreciation for adventure there that doesn't exist so much in Canada. Like, and I mean not like for the whole country. Like every uni there has a climbing club, and Chris Bonington's a knight.
Right.
And, it's kind of like, it's a bigger part of the culture.
Sure, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And it's encouraged to kind of go for it and, skip the bolts and run it out. And I think it's really cool.
Well, yeah, I've always gotten the impression, and I've never been, but, I always joke that, like, all the film and shots and pictures of the grid are close-ups, because when you pull out, anybody who's never climbed there is going to be like, what? That's this storied little cliff that everybody's totally flipping out about, because they're pretty small little cliffs.
They're tiny little cliffs, but so much history.
Right, and they've just squeezed so much out of them.
Right. Yeah. I think that's cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, the Canadian climbing heritage is like super closely tied, just like a lot of your heritage to the climbing heritage over there. I mean, the U.S. is as well, but I feel like Canada has like a big legacy of that bold climbing, bringing over these sort of same ethics.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely in the Canadian Rockies and places like that.
So I wanted to ask you back to this profit thing. So when you're climbing up there with a guy like Sonny's been on the show, super nice guy. Probably, as good a partner as you could possibly get for something like that. But still, like, if you're going up there and, having to go up and back off pitches repeatedly and start to wrestle internally with a lot of, like, questioning about, well, was this worth it? Because I remember talking to you, I think it was here, actually, about whether you were going to go back and you were not totally sure, and, whether it was all
kind of worth it. Yeah, I had yet to try it at that point.
Yeah, you had yet to try it.
Yeah.
So...
But I knew I wanted to get on it to kind of maybe yank myself out of the doldrum of being injured.
Right. So you're up there, and I don't know if we can get this into words, but what's the dynamic like when you're, because I have really good climbing partners that I go over the years on big adventures with, and that as the years have gone by, that like group of people that I'll do that stuff with has gotten really narrow, because we can get along and we can like make up for each other's weaknesses, and like, but even with those like total homies, I get up on a pitch, I don't want to back off. I want to do my part, is what it comes down to. Like, this is a 50 mission, and this is my pitch, and if I come down, he has to do it or whatnot. What was it like to be on something that was so scary and so hard to probably kind of reveal yourself a little bit, get scared, show that fear? Was that a problem at all with you guys up there?
Yeah, Sonny has kind of been one of my early mentors, and yeah, there's kind of no guff, I kind of were always really honest with each other, and he gently kind of took the reins. I just remember getting up on this one pitch called the not gay pitch, and it's like you have to do this spicy mantle above I think it's actually an anchor on Bad to the Bone. It's just a whole bunch of blades in this really shattered rock, and if you whip on this mantle, you're gonna fall. I'm certain you'll rip out this old belay, and then you can maybe rain some blocks down on Sonny. And I backed off that, and Sonny kind of I just remember being really dejected and chalk splattered on the ledge, just terrified of re-breaking my foot, and just kind of really battling some demons, and Sonny just kind of gently taking over the lead, saying kind of like, it's all right and it'll come back. And I don't know. It was really nice of him.
What a prince that guy
He is a real prince. And he just fired it.
Yeah, awesome.
As he does.
Yeah, he's an impressive climber.
No, he's
There's no doubt about it.
When it's go time, it's like, yeah, there's no more fooling around. He flips a switch and it's done.
Yeah, and I think like it's sometimes hard to kind of keep straight like how many disciplines that he's good at. Because you see him in a sport climbing thing and he's like so good at that. You're like, oh, he's a sport climber. And then, but he climbed the Prophet. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
And he climbed this and he put this up. So, yeah, an impressive rock climber, that cat.
Oh, yeah, no, he's mega impressive.
When you went back, who'd you climb it with?
My buddy Dave Alfrey.
Okay.
Came up there with me, and yeah, another prince of a guy.
Yeah, totally.
You know, did the lion's share of the hauling, and yeah, it was just awesome to hang out with him up there.
Yeah, because even if he's not up there to climb it, like belaying people on that shit is super stressful.
Oh, dude.
Like super stressful.
Yeah, it's like as real as it gets.
Because he's also committing to like, all right, well, if he wrecks himself, like I'm the guy who's getting us out of here, you know?
Yeah.
So that must have been pretty intense as well.
Yeah, no, it was really wild. I've never been so relieved as topping out that route.
Right on.
Yeah.
So how did you get into this place where you could do that mantle all of a sudden, or just leave the ground knowing what you were getting into? Can you, I mean, I don't know.
Just repetition, really. Just kind of getting back into it. You know, like that first year with Sonny, I was so terrified of re-breaking my foot, and then just kind of climbing a ton that winter, and just kind of, you know, like the process of screwing your head on tight. It took a while. But, yeah, got there in the end. But it was, it was a really heady time for me, trying to battle through that stuff. Your foot's all kind of wobbly still. I couldn't even really walk properly. I was still limping a lot, and you know, I probably shouldn't even have been up there that first year with Sonny, but I kind of needed something that would that I could aspire to.
Right.
You know, it was important for me.
Right. So let me ask you this too. So you know, we mentioned very in the beginning of this that you came out of a gym, even though you were climbing outside right away. What do you think it is about taking that path, which is a more and more rare path, this idea of climbing hard routes that are also scary, that, you know, trying to stick to some ethics of ground up like you guys did on the Golden Gate and that sort of thing, even if it broke down a bit to survive the Prophet. I mean, is basically what it comes down to, probably. So what do you think led you and your personality down that path versus going towards what 90% of the people that would have come out of that would have gone towards, which is, you know, hard free climbing, like probably not that scary, and moving on? Was it a physical thing that you just found yourself good at it, or is there a mental game that you're sort of willing to play, or maybe even find necessary to play to keep your head screwed on, as you just said?
Yeah, I think I always romanticize that kind of dangerous climbing, maybe to a fault when I was younger. But yeah, to me, it's such an integral part of climbing. It's kind of what I love best. I get kind of bored sport climbing, to be honest. It doesn't really do it for me to the same degree. Like I think a guy like Sonny is just happy as a clam to do it. I need that danger element. And yeah, a lot of it I think comes back to like the literature, and like, you know, reading Leo's piece about the Prophet was just like, you know, you don't really get those like total white knuckle tales like with people clipping bolts and rifle. No. Like I don't know if you ever read his piece, but it's just super wild. Like him going up there from the ground, just not knowing what's going to happen. And I was always really enthralled by that kind of stuff. And yeah, I wanted to see if I could stack up too.
Right. Yeah. That's a big part of it, isn't it? And that's also in the literature. I mean, that's part of like all those guys are driving each other with this like unspoken competition of who can stack up and who's worthy and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. And that was definitely a factor.
So it seems like, that was like maybe not a last, because that's too final, but you know, that ascent seems to have represented like almost a closing of the door on that style. I mean, maybe there's just not a lot of room for it anymore, but you know, the whole El Cap free climbing thing has gone like so far in the other direction in terms of previewing and getting things sorted out long before you have to go up into the NAR. Like
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm missing something, but does that seem like a pretty close assessment?
I would say so. I just think nobody was quite as out there as Leo. You know, like I certainly would never have the balls to do what he did,
Right.
you know, from the ground. And like on those original attempts, like at least we knew kind of where to go. Like the guy was seriously going into no man's land and taking whips.
Yeah.
And it's so mega dangerous at the end of the day. Like I think I don't know for sure, but I feel like kind of Leo had his moment in the sun of being motivated for that, and then he at the end of the day came in from the top down and kind of sorted it out that way himself. So
right.
I think one factor would be how finite of a resource it is, like that kind of style that would lend itself to that.
Right.
And it's just like incredibly dangerous.
So as you kind of as you did that, as you topped out on it, I always wonder, like, I've spoken on the show about this before, but you know, there's this weird anticlimactic moment to almost all like hard climbing. I mean, maybe if you like on-site something, like I think you sort of stay jazzed, but a lot of times when you put so much work into something, then it becomes this thing where when you finally do it, you're like, all right, well, that was gnar, you know. When you topped out on that, like what, I'm like trying to understand what it might feel like, but can you put it into words? Like, did you like, you know, I almost feel like maybe like you'd have like a sort of depression come over you, I don't know, or pull this thing out of your life. And I've talked to other people that have said sort of things like that, of like, I'd put so much effort into it, then there was like this missing thing after I like finish it off.
Yeah.
And what do you do now? Like go and try to climb Midnight Lightning or...
Yeah, well, on that one, I was pretty amped. We had a couple of Cobras on top at like 10 in the morning and hiked off. And,
nice.
But I kind of felt that after this last Bugaboos mission, there's definitely a couple months of, kind of like a little bit listless, kind of don't know where to take it next.
Well, we'll talk about that then. Talk about the... I wanted to get to the Bugaboo mission.
Yeah, but on the Prophet itself,
yeah.
I was just jacked.
Oh, cool.
Super amped to have kind of... Yeah,
lived. I'm alive.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. It must have felt like a little bit like that, like you just jumped out of the jaws of death.
Yeah, at a certain point on the Prophet, you kind of reach this halfway mark, and then the route kind of chills out a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but that A1 Beauty pitch for anybody who might be up to the task, it is the, I think, you know, along with this thing in the Bugaboos and the Cobra Crack, but it's one of the prettiest, coolest splitters I've ever had the joy of climbing on. And it's cool because it borders an arête too, so it just kind of adds that element of exposure as well. So that was just a super dreamy pitch to climb.
Mm-hmm. And that was, does that finish with some sort of scary bit?
Yeah, it's pretty run out, but at that point you're so hell bent that it doesn't even compute the scariness, at least for me.
Speak for yourself. I think it would definitely compute on my brain.
Yeah, I was so pumped out of my tree. I was just like so hell bent to get to the anchor.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. So let's move to the Bugaboos thing then. That's kind of like you just got done with that.
Yeah, in August.
Yeah. So talk about that in terms of the whole mission and how it took you a couple of years.
4 summers.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so it's an old Daryl Hatton aid line, and Daryl's kind of a legendary Squamish climber. He put up with this guy John Simpson in 1981, and I think it's the most beautiful line in the Bugaboos. It splits this kind of diamond-shaped head wall on the east face of Snowpatch Spire. And the very first time I went into the bugs, I asked my buddy Chris Brazeau, I was like, what's that? And he's like, oh, it's the Tom Egan Memorial Route. Old Daryl Hatton FA from the early 80s. So, yeah, it took a few years, but Hazel Finlay and I rappelled down it, I believe, in 2010. And I just was like totally blown away. It was like we kind of called it like the Cobra Crack of the mountains. It was just like this tips crack that went on for 3 pitches up this, white to orange head wall in the Bugaboos, and I was totally enthralled. And then I broke my foot after that, and then a couple years later, I kind of came back in earnest to try it with my buddy Matt Siegel. And we just kind of augured in. We spent probably close to 150 days on the wall itself. The biggest question mark of the ascent was kind of like finding a way into this crack. Like the first 80 feet is this knife blade seam, so that wasn't going to go free. So we spent days and days just kind of swinging around with our noses to the granite, looking for a free line up this chunk of rock. And Matt actually he spotted kind of like one crimp and then another crimp and then another, kind of all these invisible side pulls coming in from a neighboring route. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we bolted it. And by the end of that first summer, we had a line. It was just way too hard for us. So it took a few more years to get strong enough to climb it.
So what were the difficulties aside? So you have this face climbing pitch.
Yeah.
But it seemed like, wasn't the killer the crack?
No, the crack was hard. I mean, it was
right.
It's probably the hardest crack pitch I've ever climbed, but it wasn't as hard as this face pitch, which was just this slippery side pulls and razor blade crimps and just, that really techie granite climbing where, a subtle twist of the hips and you're off, and just kind of really conditions dependent, but you're hanging out in the bugaboos, you're hanging out in the mountains, so it's not like you go home if conditions aren't right. You're just kind of sitting up in a tent up there, just kind of getting pissed on by the rain, and it was kind of a grind.
What did you do to prepare? I mean, were you leaving and then being like, all right, I gotta be a better boulderer.
Yeah,
I gotta be, because it sounds like maybe it was pretty bouldery as a roped climb goes. Anyhow,
I was really bouldery. I got into some dead hangs. Actually, Jonathan Siegrist was he's like, man, in Spain last year, he's like, dude, if finger string's holding you back, man, you just gotta lock yourself in a cave and dangle with some weights on. And I kind of was against that for years because I was kind of figured it would hurt my fingers, but
it does hurt your fingers, but you just put it away. Yeah.
Anyway, and I had a job doing helping this tree trimmer guy in West Vancouver. And so I'd kind of I'd heave these blocks of wood around all day, and then I'd go dangle with weights on. And I thought it actually duplicated big wall free climbing really well, which is essentially just a hell of a lot of manual labor interspersed with some really hard bouts of climbing.
Right. So a few little bouts of climbing with a ton of work.
You're just doing a whole bunch of manual labor and then dangling with weights. I highly recommend it.
So when you guys went in to do it and you ended up doing it, did you feel like it was like I've got this, or were you looking at maybe another summer of not being able to pull it off?
Oh yeah, we totally didn't know if we'd have it or not. Mm-hmm. I knew that I was stronger, but everything's got to come together. You got to get a decent weather window. We'd have good days and we'd have really bad days. On the bad days, we wouldn't even be able to match our old high points, mm-hmm. which is really demoralizing, not being able to remotely come close to your old high point. And, but yeah, Matt was just a super stellar partner, and he came achingly close to climbing that face, but came up short, and that was kind of made the whole experience kind of bittersweet, to be honest.
Right.
It wasn't the fairy tale ending I'd hoped for.
There wasn't a dawn wall ending.
No,
with hugs on top.
No, we just kind of hustled it down as soon as we could. We got nailed by this crazy electrical storm at the top, and we just zipped down the wraps, and it was pretty mind bending. I'm still kind of a little bit kind of processing the whole experience.
Well, I wanted to ask you a couple things about that in terms of, it's like one of these things that got on everybody's radar. I mean, you have sponsors, Matt has sponsors, and it kind of came on everybody's radar long before you ever did it. And, in a lot of ways, the Dawn Wall was an example of that, because they could have failed, and then what? All this sort of spray for nothing. So did that ever occur to you that there was this kind of weird pre-spray on this project that may or may not have ever even been climbed?
Yeah, I kind of if I could have avoided that, I probably would have. But I feel the day in the age that we live in, mm-hmm. people want to know what you're up to, and I was basically checked out for four solid summers, and you can't just it's just a reality. You got to say what you're up to, and
right.
Yeah, in a perfect world, I think I would have skipped all the Instagramming and all that stuff, but you know,
we don't live in that world.
We don't live in that world, you know.
Right.
It'd be nice to, but at the end of the day, people kind of, yeah, they're interested in what you're up to.
Was it on a cover or something?
Yeah, I was on the cover of Ascent, the Rock and Ice annual.
Right.
Yeah.
Was that before or after it got done?
A couple years before.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim Kemple came up and shot some photos with us for a few days.
Right. Yeah. Although that pitch had been done.
No, I still hadn't led that.
Oh, really?
No, I mean, I top roped it, but leading it was a fully different story.
That's interesting. That used to be a problem.
Well, I know. I've always been against it for years. I was totally against ever posing on something I hadn't done. I was like mega against it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, maybe I just got a little bit more comfortable. I was like, I knew this thing was hard, and you know, if somebody wanted to go up there and try and scoop us, and you know, maybe it would have been a bummer, but all the power to him. It's, you know, it wasn't like it was in the valley. It was like it's a march in there in the Bugaboos, and
right.
I didn't really care at the end of the day. You know, like I knew the thing was really tough, and yeah, Tim was fired up to come up and kind of just share the stoke. So I don't know. I try not to look into it too much.
Yeah, well, it's a rad pitch and it's a rad shot. There's no doubt about it. Like, I mean, it's inspiring crack as far as they go.
Oh yeah. Well, I knew as soon as when I first rappelled down it, I knew that it was like the most out there splitter that I'll ever find.
How long was it?
That particular pitch?
Yeah.
That's like, I think it's close to a 30-meter pitch.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, it was such cool experiences trying to lead it too on those first lead attempts, because you're just you're perched on these micro jams with like a string of like purple master cams underneath you and like the alpine wonderland of the Bugaboos. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, what an experience. It was such a joy to climb on.
It's good rock though.
Yeah, it doesn't get any better.
Right. So
it's like perfect alpine granite.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, you could take screamers.
Right.
And we did.
Right.
We took lots.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't stop to sew those things up.
No, it was like totally go time, and just a magic amount, like of face holds. Like when the crack petered out, a magic face hold would appear. And the same with that face pitch leading into it. It's just like one less hold, and it would forever remain a project. Mm-hmm. And a couple more holds, and we would have done it in the first season. Probably.
Right.
So it's just kind of that magic realm of just too hard that really made us, you know, up our game.
Right. Just too hard, but not
impossible. You know, and that's, you don't find that every day.
No,
I
mean, it's really, it's kind of a hard conception to realize that as these things get harder, they're like rarer.
Yeah.
Because the difference between climbable and not climbable starts to become so minuscule.
Yeah, it's really wild. It kind of makes you believe that there's a free climbing higher power up there that makes you want to drop in a little harder and try a bit better. And yeah, it's a gift.
Yeah, and I think too with hard climbing on granite, that's really the total rule. Like, you know, honestly, like on really steep, hard, like limestone sport climbing, a lot of times move for move, you know, if you were to like grab the crux hold and show it to somebody in a gym, they'd be like, oh yeah, I could probably use that. I mean, it's not usable because it's on a 45 degree overhang, which is what makes it hard. But the actual holds are like something even a kind of average climber can conceive of using.
Yeah.
But when you get into like the hard granite bouldering and the hard granite like climbing in general, that's where I've always thought that like a normal layperson's conception of climbing is like a smooth piece of, you know, like hard climbing just means it's like smooth.
Yeah.
You know, and then you're like, well, no, sometimes it's steep and you're trying to explain it.
Yeah.
But with granite climbing, that's like as close to climbing on like a piece of drywall, you know, a smooth. I think they use that with El Cap, with the Donwall thing of like, you know, climbing your bedroom wall or something like that, or climbing drywall or something like that. But you get there with that kind of climbing.
Yeah, no, it's totally out there to be like perched on a wall like that, like an overhanging, looks totally blank wall in the mountains.
Yeah.
You know, and it's only through, it was mostly Matt's like bullheaded determination. Like, there's got to be a way through here. And we get snuffed out so many times looking like, you know, finding a crimp and another crimp and another crimp and then kind of getting blanked out. But he just kind of, you know, we just kind of kept looking, even when it seemed super bleak. And it's, all the pieces of the puzzle were there.
All right, so we got into this Bugaboo thing when I asked that question about like the post climbing sort of bewilderment. And you mentioned, it was a lot worse with the root and the bugaboos, which is, you guys just kept the name.
Yeah. I think Tom Egan was a friend of Daryl Hatton's who died in a small plane crash.
Yeah, well, see, that's like proper.
Oh yeah,
don't rename the roots. Yeah,
no, we named the pitches just for fun, but that's it.
So, tell me about that. And this was just this summer.
About the kind of bewilderment.
Yeah, the post climbing kind of thing.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know, something you've been striving for a long time, and kind of having as this, maybe thinking of it a little bit as like a trophy and something you really want to try and achieve, and then it's an old cliche, but at the end of the day, like, the reason we were able to climb it is kind of really focusing on the process and enjoying being in the mountains and trying to enjoy the little things, and that was kind of what allowed it to happen. But back to your question about feeling all burnt out at the top, it's hard to explain, striving for something for that long, and then kind of thinking about what's next. I don't have the answers yet, but I will.
Well, what did you sort of learn from that experience about what, will motivate you in the future? Is this something like, all right, I'm on to my next thing, like these big mountain routes, or, did you have any sort of revelation like that?
Yeah, I'd like to get into some kind of long link ups and things that are just a little bit more climbing, less thumb twiddling, looking at your ripped fingers in a tent.
Right. So you want to go the opposite way a little bit.
I really love that. Like, I climbed the free ride during the day with my buddy Jesse Huey a couple of years ago, and it was just like the most fun, just climbing the whole route in a day, and kind of consistent, moving consistently up with a partner you really trust. I really like that. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm going to get more into that, and I don't know if I'll ever go as deep into like the Alpine Big Wall project. I think that's kind of my the high water mark for me, at least. But the other thing I wanted to add about that route is that there's like not a single no hand stance on that entire 4-pitch head wall. So, if Adam Ondra or Alex Migos ever got into crack climbing, it would be such a joy to watch one of those guys try and link the whole thing ledge to ledge.
How many meters would that be?
80 plus.
Right.
And, but yeah, it's all there, like a la UG on the Salafé, the style can always be up. So
right.
We did our best, but it would be a real honor if one of those young guns could try and link all those stuff ledge to ledge.
Yeah. I wonder where those people will come from.
Yeah.
If those guys will be the guys, or the people will come from to keep pushing that kind of style, because it's definitely like I don't know. It seems like we said about El Cap or whatever. It's like this disappearing style in a lot of ways.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it's kind of cool, like you have different generations battling it out on the same pane of rock, just like the Don Wall, from Harding to Caldwell and Jorgensen. Like it's kind of cool how these certain pieces of rock, the same standards are being upped on the same canvas. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Kind of makes you feel like you have like a certain connection to the past, and I think it's really cool.
So you kind of mentioned that Sonny was a sort of mentor, both maybe before you ever met him, all the way up to actually climbing with him. Who else could you sort of point to as some folks that you've learned some stuff from? The reason I ask that is because the type of climbing you're engaging in, I think it's definitely that type of pursuit to where, learning from the people who've come before is like a really important thing. And maybe not more so than sport climbing or something like that. But who else can you sort of point to as either great partners or folks that either figuratively by inspiring you, who you read about, or like literally climbing with them, like turned you on to some new way of thinking or a way of doing things?
A few people come to mind. Brooks Handall. Hugely, he with his ground up approach to free climbing big walls, like Mount Watkins, and he also did some really cool things in the Cascades up in Washington State, and Leo Holding, similar, like basically guys that have really good ideas, like Leo's bid on the profit wasn't just an audacious, cool idea. And Brooke the same way. Peter Croft, you know, I respect people that look outside the box. Mm-hmm. You know, they kind of see things in a different way and try and up the ante, not by doing what had been done before, but by, just trying things in a new way. That I find that really inspiring. And a lot of the Squamish Canadian legends, Hamish Fraser, Perry Beckham, Greg Fowerker, a lot of those guys I really looked up to as a kid. And they're all just really nice guys. Beyond that, you know, it's like at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how hard you climb if you're an asshole, right? Those guys are just awesome people. And I think that's a huge part of it.
So how old are you now?
29
years old. So I hit Sonny with this, and another one of your fellow Canadians who's, you know, politely humble. But what do you think when someone says, or I say, that you now are in a position to be the guy that maybe young climbers coming up are looking up to? Because certainly from the Canadian contingent, I've gotten emails like, you got to have Will Stanhope on the show. He's the man, you know, like, what do you think of that in terms of your position to be the next kids here is like, yeah, you know, it's Will Stanhope. He was like really inspiring when I saw pictures of him doing this.
Yeah, it's really flattering. It's kind of, yeah, I try not to think about it too much, you know. I'm sure Sonny said something similar.
Yeah, he got all embarrassed. So
yeah,
that's why I thought
I feel the same way, you know. Like,
I saved that question for my Canadian guests only, by the way.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah, that's really nice of them to say that. I kind of just did my own thing, and if they're inspired by some of the stuff I've done, then 2 thumbs up. You know?
Do you feel it? I mean, do you get folks coming up to you and like?
I get it more and more for sure.
Yeah. And you look away and
it's nice.
Yeah.
It's honestly, it is really cool to inspire people. You know, I think that's awesome. You know, not to negate that. I think it's great. Yeah, you know, and in 10 years, you know, some kid's going to link the entire Egan ledge to ledge.
Right.
And I'll be the first in line to hand them an ice cold kokanee.
All right, folks, thanks for listening, and thanks to Will for sitting down. Nerves of steel, that guy. Young generation trad climbers. He's leading that. Okay, folks, remember that if you want to help out the podcast, you can go to enormocast.com. You can click on the Help Out tab, follow the instructions. Bunch of stuff to do there, including donating if you feel as though this is worth some of your hard-earned money, and also consider supporting our sponsors with that hard-earned money. And then take some of it and join the Access Fund. Or actually, why don't you join the Access Fund first, and then give some to the Enormocast, and then buy something from our sponsors, or buy something from our sponsors, give some to the Enormocast. Or you know what you can do? You know what I just did is I just donated to El Cap Report. What's the El Cap Report? That's Tom on the bridge, taking pictures, posting pictures, talking about conditions in the valley day by day. It's a really interesting and kind of funky news source, but yeah, El Cap Report. Check it out, even if you're not going to give them some money. elcapreport.com. Have any money left? All right, take some of it and go climbing. Jesus Christ, just go climbing. Put some gas in your car, get out there. And when you're out there, of course, don't forget to check your knot. Being safe doesn't cost a fucking thing. Well, helmets cost money. Anyway, everything costs money.
What the media tells us about America isn't even close to true. Everyone seems to be doing all right down here, eh? So here's 10 things that you ought to know about this land, especially if you're from the north. Number 1, they don't think soakers are a big deal. They don't even have a word for soaker. Now, where we're from, up in Canada, stepping through an ice puddle and getting that freezing cold water in your boot, it's the worst feeling in the universe. And it's so bad that when you finally get a warm sock on an hour later, oh my God, that feels like heaven. And if you're American, you don't know what I'm talking about. You know when you're in the pool and you have a wet bathing suit and then you put on underwear from the dryer on your cold buns and it just feels like heaven? That's what it feels like to end a day of a soaker. But you guys don't even talk about soakers. I don't get it.
Hey, can you hear me? Hey.
I can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that.
See, look how old we are, dude. They're like, hello? Can you hear me?
I know, it's ridiculous.
Jesus.
So what did you do? You feel old? You poor little baby this week?
Oh, man, you know, I'm just been going pretty hard all the time, and I've just been carrying on doing that and feeling a little bit beat up. And at the beginning of this week, I was out climbing with this kid who's like, 25 or something. I think he even said, he was like, man, you look a little tired. And I was like, yeah, I'm just feeling a little old and tired. He's like, how old are you? And I was like, 33. And he's like, man, I hope I'm not like past it or something when I'm your age. And I was like, whoa. I'm a little tired today, dude. I'm not like throwing in the towel here.
Speaking of Jesus, this is your Jesus year, so.
Yeah, I know. I've been on it for a while now. I got till August, so I got to get some stuff done here.
Yeah.
Making me look bad for sure.
Well, they say too that your mental faculties start to basically decline after 33. So
perfect.
Anyway, so you got like 3 more months.
3 more good months.
Yeah.
And then like last night, I've been coaching a lot more. And I've been working at this new kind of like training center thing, like helping really get it off the ground at the front climbing gym and stuff.
Right.
And so I was like showing this, guy that I'm coaching how to do like a front lever on the gymnastic rings. And I had like climbed in the gym earlier in the day, like hours ago, but like, I'm like, I'm like warmed up enough to like to demonstrate. I wasn't like working out. I was literally demonstrating to this guy, and I fully like threw my back out or like whatever, like popped a rib out of place or something like instantaneously. But I'm like showing this guy how to do this workout, so I didn't want to like show him that I just hurt myself. So I just sat there and grinned and bear it for the next 45 minutes of exercise demonstration to this guy. This felt pathetic. Anyway, that's my sob story moment.
Yeah.
Other than that, I can't really complain. Life's pretty good.
Yeah, I think you're doing okay. So you sort of become like more of a professional climber since you were on the Enormocast. What was that, like 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do you sort of attribute those successes to your Enormocast appearance generally?
Sure, man. 100%.
Yeah. Okay, good. A lot of people aren't that conscious of it. I'm glad that you're aware that's probably what shot you into the stratosphere, or at least
I mean, people stop me on the streets in Salt Lake City and they're like, dude, that Enormocast.
Yeah.
Like,
somehow they know what you look like from listening to it.
Exactly.
Well, I wanted to ask you premiered a film here in Carbondale, actually, just like, what was it, a month ago now? Shit. Yeah, about a month ago.
Yeah.
And
not even.
Yeah, The Width of Life, which featured our good lost friend Dave Pegg, which was a nice place to premiere it here in the Valley where he has so many friends. Tell me about that film a little bit.
Yeah, so this was, a project idea that I guess I had, and Black Diamond, who's my main climbing sponsor, a company I have a great relationship with, and is always doing sort of looking to do something more, which I really, really appreciate. had expressed to us athletes ambassadors that they're making these short films called BDTV and wanting to do things that were more than just climbing porn and ski porn. Stories that were really about people, about the community, about, just something a little bit more real. We were having an athlete summit. We were all together in Salt Lake City, and it was something that had occurred to me as, a valuable story to tell beyond our community of folks down the western slope of Colorado. And, I think I mentioned in the film earlier, I'd been out climbing with some folks in western Colorado after Dave passed, and we were talking about, all of the projects that Dave still had, started as far as route development goes, and just, just amongst so much of other sadness, how sad it was that just to see like his fixed lines hanging off the cliff, and like, those things would just sit there unless someone did something about it. And so, I don't know, it just kind of came together in my mind as a cool story to tell, to let people know what happened to Dave, because I think it's not, in isolation. I think people suffer from depression, obviously, in all over the place in different walks of life. But in our climbing community, I think it's something that's come up a few different times pretty recently, actually. So, that felt relevant. As Dave being my friend and me personally dealing with his loss, it felt relevant. I felt really fortunate to have the opportunity through BD to be able to just say, like, hey, I got this idea, man, and this is important to me. And I don't know, do you guys think this is a good idea or a worthwhile project? And it kind of just went from that, an initial conversation, to 6 months later, we were showing up in Carbondale, and I was super fortunate to get people like Lee Sheftel and Jeff Aki, who took over Wolverine Publishing, and Andrew Bishrat to really be a part of the project as well. And I think that was paramount in the success of it. And we went out to the distillery, this new crag, and I learned how to drill bolts, which was awesome. Right. I was sort of surprised how many people came up to me and were like, "Yeah, man, it must have taken a lot to admit that you didn't know how to drill a bolt." And I was like, really? Like, I mean, I just hadn't done it yet. Like, I was climbing. I really like climbing.
It's true that, route development is A, not something for everybody, and B, I think if you do it right, it doesn't come until later in your career. I mean, because the fact is that, until you've climbed a bunch of routes and a bunch of good routes, it's not always the best idea to just hand somebody with no experience a drill anyway. So they kind of have an idea of where those bolts go. And, we've all been to cliffs where somebody with not a ton of experience started tearing the place up with bolts, and the results aren't always that great. But
that was always my concern, was without any guidance, mentorship, I would just totally ruin what could have been a potentially cool rock climb. Right. A terrible one.
Yeah, that is a deep concern.
Yeah, it can be changed and fixed. That you don't get that first shot again.
But I wanted to ask you something else that was sort of thoughtful on my mind, and you actually called me in preparation for choosing this project. Like, what were your concerns? The truth is Black Diamond uses these videos to promote their brand. You use them, in conjunction with those guys to promote the brand. And what were your concerns in terms of dealing with a sensitive project and having it sort of seen as, just another commercial for Black Diamond or whatnot? And how did you sort of go about dealing with those concerns before you made the project?
That was definitely a concern, right? I mean, these are, on some level, marketing videos, and that this was so important to me and, serious, heavy subject. I was only going to go along with making this project happen and being involved with it if I genuinely felt that we were doing it in the right way, which was not just sort of glorifying Dave and Dave's life, but really also getting a little bit into what were his struggles, which were ultimately, too much for him. Mm-hmm. And so being honest with that part of it and not sort of like fitting it like all together with this like nice bow and tie of like, sadness, and then here I come and I put the bolts in and whoopee, and like, everything, like it had to be really honest for one. Mm-hmm. And I also just wanted to make sure, even if I thought it was being done in a genuine way that not only honored Dave, but also like recognized the real struggle he was going through, but that the people in the community were also felt good about the project we were doing, and even if they thought it was a good project, but like, hey man, this is too early, or like we just don't need to like be putting this out there, or like it's too hard for anyone. I would have just pulled the plug on it, right? Because that's what a lot about what this whole film is about too. Is it's about Dave, it's about me, but it's about our whole rock climbing community, particularly out there in Western Colorado. So that was why I reached out to you. I think to Josh Gross, who's a close friend of Dave's and route developer, to Jeff Aki, to Lee, to Andrew. I just wanted to, talk to the people whose opinion I felt represented our community out there, and who would also be honest with me, right? Like Lee would have never been like, sure, Dan, that sounds like a great idea, when he really thought that was a terrible idea.
No, you definitely would not have said yes to something you didn't agree with. You would have sugarcoated it for me, and I certainly know Bisharat wouldn't have. Mm-hmm. So, I definitely was like, all right, whose opinions do I respect, think represent the community, and will just be blatantly honest with me. When you called me, I mean, I don't think I said yes or no, but it was just something I wanted to make sure that you, as like you're not young, shit, you're 33, younger than me, and I know a lot of times people get really amped up about their sponsors and working with them and doing the right thing, and so just to sort of like tread into it with sensitivity to the community, but in the end, I watched it premiere on the big screen, and it like totally tugged at my heartstrings, which was what it should have done. And I mean, it's mostly about Dave, you're sort of playing this part in it, but yeah, it was great to see it on the big screen here. I think you guys did a really nice job, and it's not like the end all tribute to the man, but it's a nice piece to have in terms of our memories of the guy, I think.
Totally. Like, I'm really glad that I wasn't the star of the movie. That's not what the intention of the project was, for one. For two, Dave and I were close, we were friends, but I wasn't like out to make like the tribute that like, and so I think it was just a perspective on a situation and a story to tell and a story to share with people. And that's actually, so I after, in addition to coming to 5 Point, I've been to Austin, Texas, and to Seattle, and to Denver, and here in Salt Lake, presenting the video over the last month. And I was just really, like, each time I presented it, the number of people who came up to me afterwards and, like, were able to relate to the project on some level, really loosely connected to someone else they knew, or, on so many different levels, that to me, like, really also helped validate it and feel like it was, we had it, it was a success, just because people who otherwise, wouldn't have known that kind of thing was been going on in a different arena, or could have just had a new connection to climbing or to someone else or to me. I don't know. That part was like super valuable and definitely made me feel like, this story, this project, or whatever it was, has some value to a lot of people,
Right on. Well, cool. Well, thanks for chatting with me about it. Anything else you want to tell us about it?
Well, I definitely, as a climber, I need to I don't know why I need to say this, but I haven't yet finished the route, which is is really bothering me. I just haven't made it to Colorado to go climbing recently.
Right.
So, for the route still stands, which, you know, is obviously not the point of the project at all.
Right.
But, you know, I think I have every intention. I guess setting myself up to, you know, stay committed to this thing and to see it through and do it.
Right.
So feel free to if you run into me and bug me about it.
For sure.
And yeah, I look forward to coming back and finishing the route. And but obviously, it's open to anyone who wants to come show up at the distillery and climb on it.
Sure.
It's there, ready to roll.
Yeah, it's probably soaked right now, but who knows?
Yeah, man.
I know that cliff is still wet. So
yeah.
Anyway, cool. Well, why don't I let you get back to your rehab then? Hopefully you're not going to be down for the count for too long.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be all right. I just had an ambi turner right now, so.
You just what?
At the moment. I'm not an ambi turner, Chris.
Oh,
I can only turn
see.
right.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, you know, to take stuff for it's easy to take stuff for granted, like being able to turn both directions.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for doing this, Dan, and you know, let me know when you come over to the Western Slope, and I'll head up there with you if you need a belay.
Yeah, definitely, man. It was really nice to get to meet your little guy at the film fest for a second, and I enjoyed the show at the Nugget. You guys ripped it up that night.
Yeah, that was a pretty fun night. It was pretty packed in there. I didn't end up really talking to anybody. I just stayed on stage even during the break.
Dude, it was steamy in there.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Right on, Dan. Well, thanks for giving me a ring.
All right, Chris. It was great talking to you, man. I'll look forward to seeing you soon.